Oh, g'day all. Welcome to another episode of the Eureka Conservative. Hope you didn't miss me last week. Had an interesting time last week. On the Tuesday, I actually had MBN in my area go down or do maintenance or whatever it was. And then on the Wednesday, thanks to Mr. Bowen and Albo, I got my energy cut off. So I was a pretty busy boy the last 7 days trying to get everything back on board. So, I went missing last week. I apologize now. So for the first time in quite a while, I didn't do this podcast because of that. So if you were logging on or looking for it, last week, sadly, I could not for it. So unfortunately, don't have the big backups like the big influencers or the corporate media. So it's just me, my laptop, and my buddy in the background. There he is, JJ. We've just been out the front. He's got his I bought a ball with a bit of rope. You see them at the pet stores all the time. Actually, if you've got a dog, best thing ever, because there's nothing worse than throwing a ball back with a dog like him with a slobbery tongue. So he always grabs it by the ball and I can just throw it with the rope. So I don't get my hands filthy dirty with his saliva, which is great. But he loves it. I can't get him out there enough. He just won't. He just he just loves it to death. And so he's a bit huffing and puffing at the moment. So So Eureka Conservative took a break last week. I didn't. I had to get out and get some work done and get some money up so I can get the energy put back on. And the NBN, I'm glad to say, is working. So all's well that ends well. And here we are back again, going forward with the Eureka Conservative on a Tuesday night. So there's a bit to talk about. I got to be honest, because of all the work I've been doing, I haven't kept up as much with the politics as I would normally do, but I think I've got a handle on a lot of it. So tonight's going to be Burqa night. So Pauline Hanson has caused a stir up in Canberra again. My opinion on that was that, and there's a really good thing I'll share later on, a good article. I just wish she had have done it, got one of her other One Nation members to do it. She's doing so well in the polls. We need that strong third Conservative voice party to keep the Liberals and Nationals honest, and I think that's why you're seeing a move to net zero and against immigration, the Liberal Party, because if they know they don't, they're going to be leaking votes to One Nation as we go forward. So, it's really important that she keeps polling well, in my point, or One Nation keeps polling well. I'm not too sure I'm happy about the Barnaby Joyce thing, but that's up to Pauline. It's her party. She does what she likes. But I just think that the Burqa thing was a stunt, and it was a funny stunt, and let's not get too over the top. How many of the Labor or the Greens or people like Lydia Thorpe or Maureen Faraki or whatever stupid name is, how many times do they pull a stunt? How many times do they, the dead fish or the kafifas or whatever they call them, the Palestinian neckwear that they wear in the parliament? It's amazing how they can bring in a little, what do they call them, prop, the Palestinian flags. How many props have we had in the last 2 years? So just because Pauline wears a burqa and they all melt down. She's done it twice in 2 years. Having said all that, my issue is not with them. I think it's fantastic that she's getting inside their heads. I don't think she'll care one bit about getting suspended for 7 days, though I do find it amazing. The longest Lydia Thorpe got suspended was 2 days, and Pauline Hanson gets suspended for 7 days for wearing an outfit that's not even illegal. What if it's not illegal? What has she done wrong? I mean, we have Green senators and politicians have been walking in there not even wearing a tie or looking thing, and there is no dress code apparently in Parliament. So colour me purple, but I didn't realise that. So apparently there's not a dress code. You can dress however you like. And so anyway, if she hasn't done anything wrong, why is she getting a 7-day ban? I mean, just because she wears the burqa, that doesn't necessarily mean she's racist. I mean, what she is actually doing, which we'll show you a clip of later, is she's actually standing up for Islamic women, you know, trying to get them out of oppression and doing all those sorts of things that they have to suffer under. And there's another guy I follow on X, if you look him up, Mark Rowley. Heads up, Mark's a fiery guy. I like him, though, if Mark ever watches this. I pissed him off the other day. I didn't go hard enough on Scott Challen, according to Mark. So, anyway, that's his opinion. He's entitled to it, just like I'm entitled to mine. But he puts up a lot of good stuff, and he put up something today about the burqa, which I wasn't entirely opted off. Across is in the Quran, the burqa is suggested so that men don't get nefarious ideas when they see an attractive woman. So covering from head to toe, the eyes have to go down, all this sort of stuff. It's to stop men having nasty thoughts. So, you know, today apparently is the International Day for Action Against Violence Against Women. Try and say that real quick. And yet the Australian Parliament has voted to kick out a senator who was taking action against a piece of clothing that was used to ensure there was no violence against women. Now, if you go around in that circle and try and make sense of it to me, good luck. So there's a lot of uncommon sense, I won't say common sense, uncommon sense, stupidity, if you like, in our parliament. But again, here we go with that stupidity yet all over again. So look, any culture that has to dress its females from head to toe to protect them from creepy eyes that are going to have some of the most vile thoughts if they're not protected from their thoughts and their vision, you have to question that culture, don't you? I mean, seriously. You know, as a Christian, and I've lived my life the whole thing, I don't think I cast my eyes across. Look, I like attractive women. I think what red-blooded male doesn't. But I don't look at a woman because they're not covered and start thinking really bad thoughts, you know. And that's what basically the Quran was saying, this passage that Mark had quoted. So if the burqa is such a good thing, why does the Islamic culture need it? If the Islamic culture is the religion of peace, then why are their men so poor in their restraint that they can't control their urges when it comes to seeing a woman that's got hair flowing? I mean, talk about a screwed up sort of thing. So we should be bringing these people into the Aussie fold and say, you know what? In Australia, if you want, you can wear a bikini down the beach. You don't need to have a burqa. And yeah, men might find you attractive. We might wolf whistle. God damn, you can't do that anymore. But, you know, most men, the vast bulk of men, aren't going to have those sorts of thoughts. We don't need a burqa to control our urges. Now, if a man's going to go down and look at an attractive woman, burqa or no burqa, and he's thinking of sexual assault, well, that person needs some serious help before he commits such an act. But I don't think a burqa or a non-burqa will make much difference, sadly. So, you know, strange old sort of setup. And this is coming from a parliament that just engulfed us since before Albo got in thing, you know, with the Brittany Higgins and all this sort of nonsense that went on. So it's just confusing to try and follow these guys. They've just got, you know, if they didn't have a double standard, they'd have no standards at all. And that's what's pathetic. So anyway, we're going to review. I haven't, with all the work I've had to do to get the energy put back on and the power put back on. Again, I've failed myself on the policy front. So we've been reviewing policy. So I thought in tribute to Pauline, we will review a policy we put up. And this would certainly qualify me as a racist, I'm sure. But one of our policies was this, locking in our Christian culture. And what a perfect time to review one of our pillars of policy at the Eureka Conservative is after Pauline's made a statement against the Islamic burqa. This will piss a few people off. So, locking in our Christian culture, I actually think this is really important. I don't think our politicians have the courage to bring these up. They should have the courage, because the first ones that do have the courage to fight for this, I think would do well electorally. But we'll see. You don't need to be a Christian to acknowledge the role that Christianity played in both the formation and development of Western civilization and this nation in particular. In any new constitution which we proposed, we need to embed an acknowledgement of the Christian faith that was embraced by the pioneers who built this nation in its infancy and beyond. So not an acknowledgement of country, acknowledgement of the people who built this country. In that constitution, Christianity should be established as the national faith. The Lord's Prayer should be embedded as the national prayer to be used in ceremonies in our parliaments, institutions, and in our schools. A chaplain program should be instigated once more in our education system, where Christian mentors and educators can be made available to students and parents and actually teachers. The role the Christian faith played in the establishment of Western civilization should be taught in every school and locked into every curriculum. Museums should be established in every major city that is dedicated to our pioneer forebears and include sections dedicated to the Christian faith that inspired them to build better lives and a better nation. All immigrants and refugees, while being able to keep their own faith and cultures, will need to acknowledge our nation's Christian faith and our commitment to it. Any efforts from immigrants to undermine or sabotage the Christian faith as our national faith will lead to deportation. That's our policy on Christian culture in this country. No doubt there'll be some people that would hate me for saying that. I don't particularly care. I'm not a politician. So you can have all your little woke policies, whatever you want to say. I don't care. I don't think Pauline cares. But, fact is, we talk about Australia first. We talk about heritage. If you're going to be talking about heritage and how this nation was built, I think the Christian faith played a massive part in that. And we should acknowledge it as our national faith. We don't need women in our Christian faith to be dressed from head to toe. We give them the ability to play a key role in our whole society, especially as a Catholic. And this leads to a lot of debate with the old evangelistic Americans and Protestants, but as a Catholic, we acknowledge, Mary as the mother of God and as a saint, so Mother Teresa played a huge role in the Catholic Church. So we've had our fair share of female heroines and saints in the Christian movement. So, the female entity in our society was acknowledged and upheld and, I don't know what the word glorified is an appropriate word, but, we held them in high esteem for what they contributed to our society. Unlike the Islamic faith, who wants to hide them behind burqas. Now, that's not all Muslims. And Peter Credlin made some really good points today on his show about how many Islamic countries, like pretty harsh Islamic countries, have banned the burqa. And some of them have banned the hijab. So it's not just, if it's good enough for them to ban the burqa, why isn't it good enough for us to ban the burqa? Now, having said all of that, I'm not too sure that, like I said before, Pauline, sorry guys, I'm just trying to get something up to check I've got everything I need. I'm not too sure Pauline doing this was a good strategy. One Nation is killing it. They're doing the best they've ever done. They've got, I said this in my live stream today, they've got a lot of people looking at them as an alternative. People that were used to sit on the fence and not rate Pauline. I hope she just hasn't scared them off with, it was a stunt. I like the stunt. I got no problem with stunts. I mean, all the politicians do stunts from time to time. So that's fine. But I just think they should have got someone else to do the stunt. That's all. And that would have allayed fears of the people that were, if we can get One Nation up to say 25%, and they're pretty close now, that really brings some pressure on the LNP. You see it happening now to come back to the sensible centre. So the LNP have now dumped net zero. They're starting to talk about far more harsh immigration restraints, still not going as far as I'd like. But we're starting to get them, and credit One Nation for a lot of this, is they're starting to bring them back to the sensible centre, and where Conservatives are holding sway a lot in their party room meetings. Now, not so much state level. We're getting a lot of bloody women. But at the federal level, it's definitely having an impact. Why? Because the polls are having an impact. It doesn't reflect, for example, down here in Victoria, because down here in Victoria, One Nation is virtually non-existent. So it's not a bigger impact. But federally, One Nation are kicking ass. So the Liberals have to respond to it. Have to. So if they don't respond to it, whoop. Sorry, guys. So it's really important that Pauline Hanson keeps this momentum going. And on two fronts, the stunt yesterday, and also I'm not too sure Barnaby's a good choice. And I just think, sure, maybe he's the first of many, but I don't want to see One Nation being taken over by Barnaby. I just don't. I think his spot is with the Nationals. They've had him for all these years. I'm not too sure it'll be a good fit. And Pauline, God bless her, she doesn't have a good track record in this area. Just look at Mark Latham. And Barnaby is the LNP's version of a Mark Latham personality. So, not too sure. I would like to see a lot of the Conservatives with LNP ranks start joining forces with the One Nation guys. But, whether we ever get to that, who knows? But that's what I would really, really like to see. So feel free. I've been there before last Tuesday. I was getting a bunch of comments and things. When I interviewed Scott Challen, we got a huge amount. So feel free to send us through any comments you might have. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep barreling along now. What else annoyed me today? So I've got a few things I want to say for the X feed a little bit. There was something. It is really bad when you get to my age and you've got things on the tip of your tongue and the things that you're trying to remember and you can't get on top of it. We had Chris Bowen. Oh, my God, that man. He's now the president of COP, climate, whatever it is, bullshit, and he's trying to be our energy minister or whatever you call it, climate change czar. That guy is just the biggest turd, sorry, excuse my French, you'll ever come across. He doesn't care about our bills. He doesn't care about how many of it. Like, I went through it last week. I got my energy cut off. I had to find $2,000 just to pay for the bills. I was putting it off for as long as I could coming into Christmas, but the energy company decided, no, you've got to get it paid, so fair enough. But the bills are really, everyone must be feeling it. I'm only a single guy. I don't use a lot of power, but my bills have gone through the roof. I'm sure everyone else is feeling that pinch, especially, if you've got a young family or teenagers or you're running a business, you've got to be feeling the pinch of these energy prices. And they had on Sky News before, Andrew Clennell saying that, heads of industry in the energy department are saying, prices aren't coming down for 10 years while we do this renewable rubbish. So, we've been getting lied to about renewables, energy costs. God knows what cost is doing, or damage, I should say, sorry, it's doing to our energy industry and our industrial industry and our farming industry. You can't have across the board costs going up like this. It's going to impact on everything. This is why buying eggs now is pretty expensive, So it all comes back onto us. Those energy bills will be passed on to businesses. Businesses will pass them on to the consumer. We're going to be paying a lot more for our products and services. And also we're going to be paying a lot more in our taxes to cover the subsidies they give all these renewable companies to keep this insanity. It's just a vicious circle. So, everyone who voted for the ALP because you thought you were saving the planet, well done. You haven't saved anything. All you've done is ruined a lot of good people's lives, and you'd be putting a lot of people out of business and maybe sending business offshore. So for every person that thought they were doing a good thing, well, you're helping overseas foreigners get their jobs paid over there, because then companies aren't going to stay on shore if costs are prohibitive. And why would they? Why should you? I mean, just understand business. I mean, it's hard enough to do businesses in Australia as it is without having to worry about increasing energy costs. So it's not just the consumer, it's across the economy. So we've got to hopefully get something done. And hopefully that's why I'm so cautious about what Pauline's done. I think she could play an amazingly important role in the future of this country over the next 5 to 10 years. Or she could put in place somebody who could. So you've only got to look at reform and MAGA. You get the right people in the right places and you build up your poll numbers, you can achieve pretty much anything. And they're the only minor party that's on the verge of doing it. So that was my concern with that. But anyway, my salute to Pauline. We've embedded our Christian culture. Pauline, if you ever watch this, I'd love you to look over that, having our Christian faith embedded into our constitution. I think that should be something we should be looking at doing. And you, like I said, you don't have to be a Christian. You can be an atheist, but you can recognize the Christian faith where it's superior in comparison to radical Islam. And if we don't do it in the next 10 years, in the next 15 to 20 years, who's to say we're not a minority the way things are going? So I think it was by 2050 that whites in this country will be a minority. I'm not too sure that translates to the Islamic component of our country, but it's going to be sizable, if nothing is done to address it. So, it's coming for us. Thankfully, I don't think I'll be around to see it, but our younger ones will be. So anyway, so time, everybody. We'll share it now to get into, I've been going on for 20 minutes. Time to get into, I'm just going to share my X feed. I did a bit of this before, more bookmarks. Excuse me, it's been a long week. Here we go. James Packer, who would have known that I would be in tow with a billionaire? And a billionaire who spends his time on his bloody yacht. Good life. James Packer took a well-deserved dumping on Dan Andrews, a piece of shit. He correctly labelled him as human filth. Here, James Packer. James Packer was a huge fan of the proposed statue of former Premier Dan Andrews. It's going to be interesting when they put that thing up. That's just a huge target, that statue is going to be. People are going to go, that's more than the Captain Cook statues. The chances of that Dan Andrews statue is lasting long. But I'm in furious agreement with Packer about him being human filth. I couldn't speak more lowly of Daniel Andrews. I think he's human filth. There was another quote came out, and apparently Packer, when he gets back over, he reckons he's just looking for the day that he crosses paths with Andrews so he can tell him in person how little he thinks of him. Go for it, James. You're talking for a whole bunch of us. Listen to this idiot, Jason Clare. What a moron.
And can I thank my great friend, the member for Leichhardt, for his question. I'm really glad that he asked me this question because I'm about 20% shorter than he is. And in a couple of days, student debt will be 20% smaller as well. I'm 5'9", he's 6'11". The Liberal Party are at 6s and 7s. Kids in the gallery know what I'm talking about. And in a couple of days' time, $16 billion of student debt is going to come off the shoulders of millions of young Australians. And can I thank my great friend, the member for Leichhardt, for his question. I'm really glad that he asked me this question because I'm about...
This is just another ALP politician. They use their question. It was interesting today. They called, what's his name? Bowen, the part-time minister and the full-time president. They're having a crack at him about becoming president of this climate group. And Tony Burke got up onto his feet, which is amazing if you watch any Question Time, and had a crack at them for misconstruing his title. Tony Burke gets up in nearly every Question Time, as does this wanker, and they denigrate the opposition. But the problem is you've got a Speaker of the House that has obviously got his ties in with the ALP. and he allows the double standard to go on all the time. The funny thing, or not funny thing, is these guys actually think they're funny. The sad part you don't get to see much there is Tony Burke in the background and his stupid Cheshire grin. They're not even funny, but they think they are, which is like a bad comedian. Talking about comedians, Candace Owens just dropped the mother of all conspiracies on her bombshell. We won't play it, but because it goes for 6 minutes, as she does. But now she's saying Charlie Kirk was assassinating because she, Candace Owens, was too close to exposing the ultimate truth that Bridget Macron was a subject in the 1971 Stanford prison experiment. The French government took him out to protect her secret. I had the documents. They're gone now. How convenient. As usual, she doesn't back it up with any evidence. Cut to evidence board, red string connecting to a 2007 photo of Bridget Macron to a grainy black and white still of Zimbardo, which she aged backwards, written in a Sharpie and a post-it that just says math isn't mathing. Man, this is Wednesday. So the woman needs help. All right. Every week, I got to say, it is a little entertaining. Every week, you just wonder where she's next taking this. If it wasn't for bees or Egyptians or Israelis or Mossad, it's now Bridget Macron, it's now the French. And she keeps saying she's got all this evidence and witnesses, and people are falling for this bullshit. It's amazing. Cricket. I got to say, look, I love my cricket. I hate how woke it's gone, but when Test comes around, I do love it. I'm not just so sure I was a fan of the last Test because it just goes too quick. It's not like it used to be. But I was a fan of Travis Head's innings to win the Test. And now the poor old Poms, which is always a good thing, are losing their minds a bit. So much so that Mark Wood, they have no idea how big Australia is. Because he has a fear of flying, he was considering, because they had all these extra days in between the two tests, of driving across Australia. That's through some of the outback and all that sort of thing. He got talked out of it because it's too dangerous. But the fact that he would even consider it is interesting. But, yeah, I think the staff there took him on. Now, we've been talking to Burqa. I want you to listen. Iranian activist Lily Moo, interesting name. She has interesting look. But listen to what she has to say. It's quite interesting about Pauline wearing the burqa.
Yeah. Lily, what do you make of that? Because I think the issue that people have taken with this is perhaps that is it Pauline Hanson? She was going against the burqa. She was petitioning for the burqa to be banned. And then I think it perhaps came across as quite inflammatory that she then returned to the room wearing one, as Tom rightly says, in high heels, showing a bit of leg. Do you think that that's what people maybe have taken issue with, is that she's done this to make a political point, and quite a controversial political point at that?
I welcome her point very much so, as an Iranian woman who's been pushed into gender apartheid, and my entire autonomy was put into a prison of the compulsory hijab in a country that in eventuality pushed me and my family into exile. So I very much welcome her bold statement and her act of defiance against such a prison for women. If her body is to be hidden, if her body has autonomy, and it's to be hidden under the burqa in order to say that is the accepted autonomy, well, she took her own autonomy into action and she showed her fully autonomous body as she wanted to. This burqa is meant to be a revival of a new wave of feminism, according to a lot of feminists who are these days standing with women who want to cover their faces because they want to feel closer to God, apparently. The rest of the society have to kneel for that and accept it and applaud it. Well, our dear parliamentarian in Australia, I applaud you. And as an Iranian woman, I think this is a beautiful statement and it should be actually encouraged, and courage is laudable.
Well, Lily Moo, I'm very glad that you're not wearing a burqa for this interview because it's just, frankly, worse for TV. But Lily, Iranian activist, thanks indeed for joining us.
And there you go. How interesting is that? And then we come back to Australia and we have Marine Faruqi. I always pronounce the name. this woman, like Pauline said, she should just go back to Pakistan. Let's have a listen to what she thinks of Australians.
And it says so much about those sitting opposite to me. They talk this talk of a wonderful multicultural nation. And I must say that when I came here first in 1992, I did think that the richness of people that came here from all parts of the world was what made this country so fantastic. But you can't just speak words. You can't just speak words and not call out what is actually happening.
Senator Faruqi, please resume your seat. I've asked you to resume your seat. Senator Faruqi, I've asked you to resume your seat. This debate will be heard in respectful silence. No, Senator Canavan, if you can't do that, leave the chamber. There will be no interjections and no comments from anywhere.
Nazis are literally marching on our streets, and that is being allowed to happen in New South Wales by the New South Wales Labor government. So, like, a motion is good, but that is nowhere near what we need to do. Every single person in this chamber should be forced to do anti-racism training. That has been a recommendation for a long time.
Order.
Of various committees and frameworks. Let's start there. And at the end of the...
Yeah, let's start there and get this bitch through some anti-racism training. She hates whites, she hates Australians, she hates this country. If anyone needed some anti-racism training, it's this miserable individual.
Today, unless discrimination, racism, and inequity for First Nations people is ended.
This is what I hate. The Islamic lot keep drawing in the First Nations. They're trying to use that as an example of our racism towards people of colour. They couldn't give a shit about the Indigenous people here. If you had a majority Islamic government, so the majority of politicians in our parliament were Islamic, they would destroy the Indigenous community. They would want to have nothing to do with them. But while they're in the minority, they keep dragging them into their own little debates.
Nothing will change because this country was built on violence, on racism, on discrimination of First Nations people.
And there you go. Her racism against our forefathers, our heritage, the people who built this country, the people who gave her this new life. What a miserable bitch this one is. She's sitting in our parliament getting a massive wage, and that is all on the back of those people she just called violent racists. What an ungrateful piece of shit she is. There is no way she should be sitting in our parliament. We need to enact something like we proposed through a new constitution to ensure people like her never get a seat in our parliament again. And the same goes for Lydia Thorpe. Treasonous bitch.
So today, as a Muslim woman who has faced this racism and discrimination from the day she stepped into public life, I plead with you, because it gives me no pleasure to say I warned you when I stepped into this parliament about where the normalization and legitimization of racism would lead to. I plead with you to act on it. Let this be a wake-up call today, this motion. Let this be the start of actually dealing with structural and systemic racism that pervades this country, and let that be grounded in...
Don't need to listen anymore of that. What a bitch. What a bitch. There's an article here. This is the one... I do agree with this. The One Nation summer of Pauline that could have turned the party into a legitimate force has been ruined by its leader's bizarre decision to wear a burqa in the Senate, writes James Bolt. I don't agree with the exact tone of it, but I do think she's put that at risk. I hope that's wrong, because we need, like I said before, this is not out of vindictiveness against Pauline or the stunt or whatever. She was just in such a strong position. I hope the whole stunt works in her favour. I am concerned only because I've had conversations with Australians over here that are second, third generation immigrants, and they've been brainwashed into thinking Pauline's the devil. So they were giving her a real look. I'm just wondering whether I meet them this week and they say, well, I told you so, Bob, we're not voting for her. So let's hope that's not what's the outcome of what she's done. And that is it on that one. Where are we go? We'll go into our notifications. No, not our notifications. Home. There. We'll see what else I've had a look at. Make sure you're still with me. Yep, you are. Very good. I'm getting better. Talked on that. That was my live stream for today. You don't necessarily. Oh, this little BIT talking bitches. 21-year-old Labor parliamentarian Senator Charlotte Walker. This is her expenditure report for July to September this year. July, August, September, in 3 months. $78,680.40. What are we getting back for that? That is unreal. That's a family's wage. Some families aren't even on that. That little bitch has just spent in 3 months what a family would kill for. That means $80,000 in 3 months. She's going to be spending over $300,000 in expenses. All she does is TikTok videos. How the hell is she getting away with that? Daisy. A dog is one of the few things in life which is exactly what it seems. A follow doesn't mean I want to get to know you personally. No, a dog is. I do agree with that. Talking of women in Parliament, it's only if it's...
So I refute your comments about Aboriginal women. You're not the expert just because you're a minister, and you're not the expert when it comes to what Aboriginal women talk to the colony about and what they don't talk to the colony about. The systems that we have to deal with as Aboriginal women in this country are all violent. They're all violent. From going to the hospital, having a baby, violence. Seeking housing, violence. Going for a job, violence. Any service that the colony has established are racist. And so, Minister, you cannot say that your workers in your service know the community.
What a stupid woman. Again, I mean, here's the funny thing about Lydia Thorpe. If she never told anyone she was an Aboriginal woman, no one would know the difference. I'm so sick to death of these people that have got so much Anglo culture, Anglo DNA in them, you know, making the claim that they're Aboriginal, but then going off about the racism in this country. I mean, this is another woman that sits in our parliament, gets a great wage. What violence when they have a kid? I mean, no one's forcing you, one, to have the kids. But if you have a kid, everyone can go to a hospital to give birth. I mean, what's she talking about? The actual birth? What violence is she talking about? Applying for a job? How is that violent? Everything you do for a job these days, when you apply for it, it's pretty much online. How the hell is that violence? I mean, just insane. Insane. Nick Fuentes, don't know what's on there. Oh, this is me. All right. Sorry. Good one to finish.
There are two types of dog owners in this world.
Okay.
There are people like me. I own a dog. I love my dog. I care for my dog. I got a tattoo for my dog.
Sure. Yeah, I'm on board with that. Good job.
But at the end of the day, he's still a dog.
Where are you going with this?
And then there are people that their world revolves around their dog.
Oh, now we're going to talk about me. I get the distinction now.
These people like their dogs more than they like most humans.
Not most. All. I like my dog more than all humans.
If you are dating one of these people and their dog does not like you, they will cut your ass
Damn
off.
straight.
Correct.
They leave the TV on when they leave the house so the dog
Definitely.
isn't alone.
Correct.
Or they'll leave the radio on when they leave the house so the dog has something to listen to.
Also
Very correct.
In the event that the dog were to become unalived, they might even take a leave of absence from
Definitely
work
take a couple
to
of days.
breed the dog.
Might. I might not even go back to work. What are you talking about?
Because they're going to grieve the dog as if they lost a child.
Yes, I will grieve it as though I lost a child because it's the closest thing to a child I'll ever have. What the fuck of it?
Yeah, I'm with that guy. I've lost a couple of dogs, and I've got it. I'll be the first to admit it's hit me, and I have grieved my dog. So I don't see that that's necessarily a bad thing. A dog is a member of your family, and obviously it's not the same as you losing a human in your life, but it's pretty close. That dog, like this one I've got, they're with you everywhere you go. You know, I mean, your kids and whatever, they find their own way in life, but your dog, he's relying on you. He's relying on you, feeding on him, looking after his health, her health, everything. And they just follow you because they're so loyal. So it can be very emotional for any dog owner if they're really attached to their dog when they lose that dog. So anyway, Tucker Carlson, don't think I need to lose. What is something I don't get? Last one. All right. I'm going quick tonight. What the, like I put up here, what the hell is wrong with Gen Z? Look at this poll. This is 18 to 24. Gen Z, their federal voting intention, out of Gen Z, 74% would vote for the Greens or ALP. 15% would vote for LNP or One Nation, 5% independent or other. That's probably the Teals or whatever. 74% would give their vote. What the hell's going on with our young ones? I mean, I keep asking on my podcast and my live streams, I would love to get to interview and sit down and talk with some young ones and find out. I'm struggling to believe that's believable. But, you know, if the young ones think they've got it bad now, keep voting for those bastards. I can't believe, and I'm trying. I am really trying. And I've coached a lot of those ones in that age group. So I'm back now. I don't get how they could be that dumb that they could be voting 74% for the Greens and for the left. Unbelievable. And that's it. That's our future. I understand when you're young, you tend to lean left and you eventually come around and become more centre right, whether that's as far, you know, conservative or some far right. I mean, everyone's talking about the NSN and how they're getting young men. That's 74% of young ones. What I'd like to know of that 74%, how many of them are female? That's staggering. That means we haven't done a good enough job. One thing I'm definitely going to be trying to do on this podcast is to try and arrange a round table with some young ones, the Gen Zs, and find out whether what we're hearing is factual or it's not. I'm definitely going to be trying to do that in the new year. Let's see where that takes us. It should be a bit of fun. Anyway, guys, that's, I think, you know, we've been going 44 minutes. It's good to be back on. Someone new. Good to be back on. Sorry, guys, I'm just checking the technical. Good to be back with you on the Tuesday night podcast. Sorry again for last week. It's been an interesting week. I will try and get this up and cracking again. It was really. Oh, one last thing I'll say. To all those ones who keep, after I had the interview with Scott Challen, which went over really successfully, something like 2,000 views or something. For me, well, that's huge. And Scott was terrific. You know, we don't, and I say he's terrific because I copped a bit of flack on that. I'll tell you why I think Scott was terrific. Because as soon as I contacted him and said about coming on, no hesitation. Yeah, Bob, I'll come on. Came on, we had a great chat, went for over 2 hours, and we got a lot discussed. You know, and that's the way I want to conduct my interviews, where we can actually talk with each other, not at each other. And Scott got a really good chance to put across his point of view and what he's trying to do. and I got a chance to ask him questions and find out what was fact or fiction, especially in regards to NSN. And anybody who watched that, a few were upset that I dared interview Scott, but my opinion is this. This is something I do share with Tucker Carlson. I think Tucker's book full of shit. I will talk to anyone. Tucker won't talk to anyone who push back on him, but he'll talk to anyone that promotes his own opinion. I'm happy to talk to an NSN member. I'm happy to talk to a Greens member, an ALP member, politician. I've put the invites out to people from the Libertarian Party, the LNP, the Nationals, Reignite Democracy. They've all had a bitch and a whine at me at different times, but as soon as I say, come on the show, let's talk, they all run for the hills. It's amazing. I didn't think I was that scary. I'm just an old baby boomer who's got an opinion. So I've got a few people that have contacted me, so I'll try and get them for next week. Who said they would like to come on, but one of them, I said, yeah, no worries. These are the days. Hasn't come back to me, so I don't know what he's doing. So if you are interested in coming on the show and having a bit of a political chat or just to chat about society or whatever, feel free to send me a DM. Those who have sent me the DM, I've been pretty occupied this last week. I'll come back to you in the next 48 hours. I'm hoping to get, a few others onto the show like Scott so we can talk a bit of politics, especially those who can have an impact on what we're doing. We'll see how that goes. Maybe I don't get a huge following, but I think they should just be embracing all of us. And who knows where that could lead to. Anyway, that's enough from me tonight. We'll come back with a bigger and better episode next week. Getting close to Christmas, most important time of the year, especially for those of you who've got families. So all I can say from me is God bless. God bless your kids. I always finish off with this. God bless your kids. God bless your grandchildren. Hug them close. Appreciate what you've got. God bless your pets. Hug them close. Take them for their walks and things like him. He's a nut. We're about to go down the supermarket in a minute after this to get some of his favourite food. And listen, God bless yourselves. Look after yourselves. We'll see you next Tuesday as we continue to work to try and make this country better and that flag mean what it used to. All right. Good night, everyone. See you for those on the live stream, I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully, and those on the podcast.